Hey YouTube, if you're here today, you're probably into woodworking. You may want to get into woodworking. You may be into drinking or smoking whiskey. That's what most of you are here for, I bet you. So in front of me here, I got some hickory wood smokers that I've made off my CNC, and I've taken some files off of Etsy. I've designed a few myself. They're pretty basic, and what we're going to do today, we're going to take something maybe out of the garage, maybe out of the shop, maybe even firewood. And we're going to make our own whiskey smoker, and we're going to keep it simple, and we're going to make something out of nothing. Let's get going. So let's start with wood selection. I have some oak and some maple in my wood stack out back for my fire pit. We're going to go with a piece of maple here. Doesn't look like it has a lot of cracks, and it does have a little bow in it. I guess I could make a bow and arrow out of it, but we're going to go with a whiskey smoker. We're going to need to take this into two pieces. I do need to put this in my wood drying kiln, and it's not going to fit, with the bow in it. So you guys check out my wood drying kiln. So onto the oven. Obviously want to do this when my wife's not home. So we're going to stick it in the oven. We're going to try to get the moisture out of it. We're going to go down to a very low setting. In my case, the oven would only go down to 180. So you'll see me setting to 180 here. Temperature's rising. And the way I did it over the course of a week, I went in the oven for 180 for 2 hours here, 3 hours here, and just tried to make sure that I didn't leave this thing in here while I was at work. Now I'm going to give the dog some attention here. They're excited to say hi. Buddy to the right, Snooky to the left. They're saying hi, YouTube. So back to the wood kiln. Have some cracking that's developed over the last few days of drying. I did inspect that, and you can see my bark started to peel away from the wood, which I like that too. That should make bark removal a little bit easier. Checking things out. I'm wondering if I'm going to find some usable wood as I cut into this thing. Bark removal, piece number one, went really well. Bark almost fell right off. Now the second piece, I had some bark that was sticking to a knot, and I decided to just leave this, and I would hope it would fall off along the way, but it didn't. Bandsaw, chopping this thing up, and I really didn't like how the bandsaw was cutting here, and I can tell you it's more user error than anything. So I'm going to glue this thing up to a flat piece of wood. And so after these are glued up, the idea here is to use this flat piece of wood to create a good flat surface to go against my fence, and to make a good parallel cut to the existing cut. But as I brought my fence over, I realized how close I need to get my fingers to the blade. So I'm still moving forward here, squaring up the blade and making sure I'm going to make a decent cut. But as I'm running this thing through here, I'm also in the thought process that I don't need to move that fence any closer to that blade. But what you're going to see is me making the cut, and then we're going to bail off of this table saw idea and move on to something else. I could have flipped it over and used the other side, but we're going to use the old miter saw. So here I'm going to chop this piece up. This is a different piece, and we're just trying to find a usable piece of wood that doesn't have a lot of checks in it. So what I found out is this piece here was cracked almost all the way through on the side, and I didn't have a lot of usable wood, so I ended up putting that one in the burn pile. Going back to the wood I was working on with the CA glue jig, squaring off one end, and what I'm going to do here is square off that end and glue on another flat piece of wood that I just run through the planer. And we're going to make a little jig to go up against my miter saw fence, and hopefully that'll let me make a good square cut. After a couple screw holes and a couple screws, we got our jig ready to go. So we're going to take this jig to the chop saw and chop this thing down. Now my blade didn't go all the way through, so I'm flipping it over. I'm going to do some guesstimation here. I did get pretty lucky and got a pretty clean cut on the other side. As I pop this thing off, and I'm going to check for flatness, got a good flat surface on that side. The other side, a little bit of daylight You see where my burn marks are and that second cut on the saw. But a little 40 grit, we're going to polish this thing up a little bit, take some burn marks off, flatten it off pretty good, and we're going to see how this goes. So I'm going to take this into my sanding process a little bit while I'm at it. Take off the sharp corners. Did speed this up for you. Then I'm going to find the center using the center of a sanding pad to make an X, and then pop a little hole in it with my center punch. I did use my drill press for this. I could have easily used a cordless drill, but I just got this drill press. I was trying things out and trying to get good at using it. So popping a center hole in here and going through some measuring of a screen that I had that I was planning on using. Trying to make sure I know what size bits that I'm going to use and everything. So we're going to center this thing up and see how this goes. I've never really done this before, so this is a lot of trial and error for me. And we're gonna try some things, and I did run into some things that just didn't work, and I had to do them a different way. So you have probably several different ways that you would do it differently, and I would tend to agree with you there because I would definitely do it a little different the next time. But punching a half-inch hole through here, then that's for my screen. And what you see here is a washer that I decided I was going to use for the surface. And the idea here is I'm going to drop the screen in there, which is full of wood chips, and then the washer is going to sit on top of it. The washer not only holds a chip in, but it'll also kind of protect that wood surface. So I'm into my sanding process here, nothing special. And I wanted to just get some of the bark off and round off some of the edges. And I'm at probably a 120 grit here. And I am going to do a water pop that you see coming up after I do some hand sanding. But I did speed it up quite a bit because I know you don't want to see a bunch of sanding that if you watch woodworking videos that you see quite a bit of that. So speeding it up here, and I'm into my hand sanding, and I'm going to get my little block sander, taking some edges down, and we're just round it off and get it ready for that water pop. Bottle of water, raising the grain a little bit, and we're gonna let it dry for a little while. Now I'm through with my sanding process. We're gonna put some mineral oil on the pieces here. I got a surprise for you. I ended up making a second piece from a piece of maple that I found in my lawnmower building. And it's been sitting out there since I had cut the tree down. And I looked at that, and it didn't have any cracks in it whatsoever. The piece that you saw me making does have a couple of small cracks in it, which I'm not too worried about. It is a piece of firewood. Um, but little mineral oil soaking here, and a few folks on here won't like that I'm putting mineral oil on here, but it's my project. I'm not selling it or anything like that. I'm just making it. So if you don't like using mineral oil on a wood smoker or a whiskey smoker, certainly don't use it if you don't want to. So we're going to take off the mineral oil from the surface, and we're going to get into the fun part. We're going to smoke some whiskey here in a second. So these things I think turned out pretty good, and you can see me drop in my screen and my washer. As I'm setting it up here, and my camera work is not very good, you can see part of my tripod here. But the reason I wanted to show this part is as I set the whiskey there and I start to take off the top, something happens. And I realized that here that as I took off the top, it actually broke. And that should tell you something there. That means I think that whiskey has been sitting in my cabinet a long time. And I got this for Christmas, and I haven't drank it very much. And I really don't know the difference between whiskey and bourbon. I think whiskey is from Tennessee, and bourbon, who knows? I just don't know. I don't drink a lot of this stuff, but I do like to make stuff out of wood. So that's what brings us here. I'm gonna drop a few chips in the screen, and these chips I made just saving some maple from from my planer just to do stuff like this, and we're going to drop that washer on top, and I think that washer is going to protect that wood and not make as much charring that I'm used to seeing on the wood when used for whiskey smokers. So pour a little bit of whiskey in here, and not too much because I'm not going to drink it anyway. We're just going to see how this works, and I got a good flat surface. I'm happy with that. And as I'm firing up the torch, I'm going to give it a little touch and go here, and I can see my smoke is falling right into the glass, which I like. And I'm going to tell you that this smoker here, when compared to some of my other smokers that I've tried, drops more smoke in the glass than anything I've ever had. And I'm really happy with how that performed. And I got quite a bit of smoke in here. And looking at my whiskey smoker, the maple, the homemade look, I'm liking it. So I'm pretty happy with the result here. And when it come to charring that was on my whiskey smoker after the fact, I looked at it, and I wasn't getting any charring at all, which my other whiskey smokers, it would char, and I would have to think about not putting direct flame on the wood to make sure I didn't get any charring. But this, I didn't get that here. And maybe it was the mineral oil that was protecting it a little bit. Maybe it was my washer, or maybe it was just the fact that I used maple, and maple is a nice dense wood. I don't know. Maybe you want to share what your thoughts are, and feel free to do so. So you'll see me trying the second maple piece out. This is the one that came out of my work building, and it doesn't have any cracks whatsoever. It's a little lighter of a color, but I went through the same process, and this one is a little bit thicker. And I don't really expect it to perform any different here. And as I drop the torch in here, that ends up being correct. It drops smoke in there pretty nicely, and I'm really happy with how this one works also. And I don't really know why this one or these two perform better than the designs that I bought off Etsy, or the designs that I made myself. So you may have some thought there on why these actually work better. I can tell you that the torch that I'm using, if you want to do this for a hobby or whatever, you want to get you a good torch. I do have a few jet lighters that are just small ones, and you won't get that smoke effect like you want unless you use a good lighter that's got a little bit of power to it. So overall, I like how this turned out, and I'm hopeful that you got some enjoyment out of this, and maybe even want to do something like this yourself out of either firewood or just something laying around the house. Pretty cool making something out of nothing. Now, if you like this type of content, and you want to see more that's pretty much made from nothing, just scraps laying around the house, I'd like to do some more stuff like this, and I'd love to hear your ideas on what you think I ought to do. If you could subscribe, show me that you like this kind of content, set your notifications, and I want to do more of these. I have scrap hardwood in my garage. I have old fence pickets, hundreds of them, that I want to use to make something out of nothing. And what I mean by that is the fence pickets. I'm going to make a really nice coffee table out of those fence pickets, and I want you to see it. And I'm also going to take some of that scrap wood in the garage, and not too sure what I'm going to do with it. So again, I would love to hear your comments on what you would like to see, and we'll certainly do that. So you guys take care.